Neil deGrasse Tyson considers
Right.
himself a science communicator.
Hmm.
I feel like I've heard that term a little bit more and more with different fields of study, whether it's a science communicator, history communicator, or whatever it may be, as someone who has a deep understanding of that field, finding a way to communicate more abstract or more complex concepts into more digestible forms so that the general public or people with like a passing interest in it, someone who may not plan to become an astronomer, but someone who still finds astronomy interesting, a way to get people to understand what may be going on, some of the concepts of that field. So, with that idea, I was curious if you thought history communication was changing at all. What do you think the better or worse forms of history communication may be, so that when someone is playing as Ezio Auditore in Florence in Assassin's Creed 2, that they might reflect a bit more on the historical time that is being represented and the representation itself.
Yeah. Wow. What a question. I think it has changed a lot. I mean, even since I started grad school, say in 2008, 2009, actually 2007, and I think that was YouTube had barely kind of existed at that point, but I think YouTube has done like really changed the game as far as, I mean, just how anyone consumes media, but especially historical media. I mean, there's just an infinitude of channels about representing the past, whether it's something like Tasting History with Max Miller, or it's the various like simplified histories of different things. I mean, I think it's really, it shows that there is a real hunger for engaging with the past, and for either learning about it or being entertained by it, or having some kind of curiosity satisfied. I think that's all to the good ultimately, especially in an age where history enrollments in a formal college setting are generally declining. It's not because people aren't interested in history. It has to do more with the economics and the structure of how we learn things, or not just YouTube, but podcasts also. I mean, there's a proliferation of those things, whether it's hardcore history or it's like revolutions, or I mean, gosh, there's just seems to be one on every subject. I mean, I'm on one right now, right? So uh, that's all to the good as well, and I think that only amplifies the real desire that people have to not only learn about it but to speak on it, and to educate themselves in the preparation of these programs. So I mean, that is a big change in the last 15, 20 years for sure, that I think is generally a very positive one. But as we've broken away from the more late 20th century model of getting things through highly produced television documentaries, or films, or text media, although books, they still make books, so that's part of it too, is the question of like, what how do the inputs get made? Where is the information that these folks are getting, where does that come from? And whether that's Wikipedia, which itself has to come from somewhere, or whether that's historical monographs or trade publications or something like that, we always come down back to the fundamental question of where is this knowledge coming from, how is it being made? And I think that part is what is kind of in danger of eroding as support for professional history is crumbling in our academic institutions. And people who are being paid to produce historical knowledge through original scholarship, and through long, careful, considered study of reading deeply in a field and then trying to talk about it, that is slowly being, or not so slowly being, starved. And so there is a great appetite for popular history, but the question is, where is that information going to be coming from? So to kind of try to bring it back to your original question, I think all that history communication is being done, but not necessarily by the professional practitioners themselves. And I think, I don't know exactly what needs to happen. I mean, my inclination is to say that yes, professional historians, I think, those who are good at communicating in general, and those who are willing, should be encouraged and given various forms of material benefit, like time off or leave or something like this, to develop means of popular communication so that they can take their specialized knowledge and their, they've been trained to handle this material in a responsible, disciplined way, to encourage them to make YouTube channels or podcasts or video games. But also, I think about the publishing industry and how there's so much historical scholarship out there that people, I think, real like these podcast creators or YouTube creators or video game developers would really benefit from having, but they can't get to it because it's behind an incredible paywall, right? Like Elsevier is charging $150 to like rent some article in, an obscure European history journal. Well, no one's going to read it unless they have they're connected to a research library, which really means you have to be in an academic community. There are these barriers, economic and material, to connecting people who want this knowledge with the knowledge that is already being made. And so I think that is one thing that could really help break down this public and academic barrier, is the way that knowledge is disseminated. And I think that YouTube is a very useful way for doing that, but it's not as good as not only encouraging people but allowing people to be able to do their own research. And I don't use that phrase facetiously. I mean, like, to train them to do research that is meaningful and careful and considerate and professionalized. But it's very hard to do when you actually can't get a hold of this stuff.